Hey guys, Michael Corsentino for Shutter Magazine. Welcome to the companion video for my April lighting column. This month I am looking at one light fashion looks. 10 fashion looks with one light. I think, a lot of people, these one light videos and these one light articles that I've been doing interspersed throughout the past few years have always been really popular and really resonated with people. And I think one of the main reasons is because a lot of people just have one light. And that said, even people who have lots of light, myself included, lots of lights, I'm lucky enough after a long career to have a lot of lights, kind of a scary amount of lights to work with. But I end up defaulting many, many times to just one light because one light really works. There's so much that you can do with one light. You don't need, I think people make the mistake, and I've made the same mistake in the past, of throwing too many lights into the mix, and you really don't need a ton of light a lot of the time. For some projects, absolutely, you need as many lights as you need for it, but there's just a ton that you can do with one light and a reflector. There's just a ton that can be accomplished with one light. So if you have one light and you've been feeling held back, don't, again, not to beat a dead horse, but there is just a ton that you can do with it, and a lot of the time I end up just using one light. So let's dig right in and take a look at these 10 looks. Basically, when we're talking about one light, in order to get these different looks, we're going to be dealing with a few different variables, and that is going to be direction. The direction of the light is going to contribute to different looks. The distance of the light is going to contribute to different kinds of looks. The way we modify the light is going to contribute to the different looks that we're able to create. And the other modifiers that we introduce, aside from just modifying the light modifier that we put on our light, but the other, reflectors and diffusion panels and subtraction panels, anything else that we add into the mix that is not quote-unquote a physical light source, but that gives us extra illumination or takes light away. Okay, so those are some of the ways that we're going to modify the light. So we're going to start off with a loop light pattern. It's a very simple pattern and one that is very popular and used often. It's really at home and comfortable in fashion and portrait scenarios. So that's what you're seeing here. We've got the lighting pattern on the left and the resulting image on the right. So let's take a look at what we've got going on here. Right now we're starting off with a bare Mola Demi beauty dish. This is a 27-inch beauty dish. It is undiffused, which means it's bare. There is no diffusion sock or diffusion fabric on the front of it. Here, right in the front face, right there. And we're going to do that next. Let's just undo that. With a beauty dish, you do have an internal diffusion disc, which you're seeing right here. And that is blocking the light, which is coming from here, and bringing it back here, and then it's coming out there. So it's going to soften the light a little bit more than just a typical bare source. It's bare, but it is softer than it would be were it not in a beauty dish. The beauty dish gives you a nice soft light, but it still gives you a nice bit of contrast, which is one of the beautiful things and things that a beauty dish does so well, is it's able to give you a soft light, but at the same time a kind of a crispy light, and that's why it's one of my favorite modifiers, and the Mola chief among them. They are just amazing beauty dishes. So if you haven't checked out Mola, I encourage you to do so. They have a whole range of amazing beauty dishes. Right now we're just looking, in this video, in this article, we're just looking at the Mola Demi, but they have all sorts of different beauty dishes. Some of them larger, and the Rayo is a smaller one, and longer with more throw of light, but there's just a ton of different things that they can do. So anyway, Mola Demi beauty dish, undiffused. You can see the look that we're getting here. Undiffused, we're going to have a punchier, specular look than if we have a diffusion fabric on the front. So we're just kind of heightening that contrast a little bit by using it undiffused. You can see here we've got that shadow coming off the nose, which is our kind of signature loop look. Based on the direction of the light, you can see the shadow off the legs as well, which gives you an indication of kind of the angle of the light. These diagrams are always, not exactly accurate to a fault, but you get the idea of where the light was placed and the distance that the model is off of the background. Okay, that's another key factor. And we're going to talk about distance later on as we move through our tutorial here. So you can see here we've got all this. This is about 20 feet, 15 or 20 feet. Okay, so let's move on to our next look. So okay, so here what we've done is added diffusion sock to the front of the beauty dish. So let me make sure I'm on the right drawing layer here. You can see that right here. So now we've got this fabric which is on the front of the beauty dish, and that is softening the overall look and kind of broadening the light source a little bit. And just giving us generally a softer look on the skin. You can see it here. You're just going to want to look at shadows and skin tones, the transition between shadows and highlights, the shadows on the floor, and you get it's subtle, but you do get a softer look. And of course, the closer that we get, and we're going to look at some closer images later, the more these things become apparent. On a full figure, it's a little difficult to tell, but there is a softness that's happening. A more diffused look that's happening to the light. Okay, so everything else has remained the same. All that we've done is we've introduced that diffusion sock. All right, so let's move on to our next look. So now we've got that same setup with the beauty dish with diffusion sock, but I've added in a white fill card, okay, a V-flat on the left side, camera left. And what that has done is opened up all the shadows over here, because absent that, you're going to get a dark look. Let's turn that layer back on and see if you can see here how dark that is, right, on the left side. So let's turn that back off, go back here. Now you can see how we've just opened that up with the introduction of that V-flat, and it's also opened up all of this and given us some light over here. Anything happening on the left side of Allie, our model, has been opened up substantially, all that shadow stuff. So it just gives you a different look, a brighter look. Not that one is better than the other, but they're just different looks. It depends on what you're going for and what the mission of your photograph is. Okay, so this is all just about controlling light, not that any one kind of light is the right light or wrong light. All right, so moving on. The next thing I wanted to show you what it would look like when we pull that out. Okay, so here's our close-up with no fill light. Okay, so diffusion sock on the beauty dish, same exact positioning, loop light, everything the same, but we've gone from having that fill card on the left to now not having it on. And you can see here that all of a sudden we have a much darker shadow. So it's really much easier to tell on a close-up image. All right, so I want you to take a look at these all together so we can sort of get a better idea side by side of what they look like. So here you can see on the left we've got fill light with a white V-flat, camera left, and then you can see what we just looked at before, large frame, no fill light with the white V-flat removed. Okay, so again, we've got our beauty dish with the diffusion sock, and you can see the effect of the V-flat, white fill on the left, and then removed on the right. Okay, so a much darker look. It's a look I really like, but again, it all depends. It's all season to taste. It just depends what floats your boat. All right, so the next thing I wanted to show you was, this is our next look. Now what we've done is we've taken it to the opposite extreme. We've gone from no fill to white fill, and now we're using subtraction, okay? A very much underestimated thing, something you don't hear a lot about, but something that you see all the time in professional shoots is fill, and subtraction, because what subtraction does is it introduces more shadow. It takes away light. It sucks up the light. So this is especially useful in really large studios that have white walls and everything is white, and you've just got light bouncing all over the place. Even small studios, if you're in a small home studio and you've got white walls, it becomes very difficult to control the light because you've just got light flying everywhere. So black fill cards, or subtraction panels I should say, are your go-to tools for introducing shadow and shaping and molding the light. Okay, so you can see here that now all of this area, which was a little bit darker without the fill and obviously brighter with the fill, is now significantly darker with a black subtraction panel placed camera left. Okay, and you can really see it here on the fabric as well, and Allie's hand. All of this stuff gets much, much darker and moodier, and I love this look as well. I use this a lot. Okay, so let's take that off, and now I wanted to give you kind of the roundup of all of the fill versus no fill versus subtraction. So on the left, we've got the fill light. That is our white V-flat placed camera left In center spot, we've got no fill, so we've pulled the V flat out, and you can see here that now things have gotten a little bit darker on the left. And then we've heightened that effect by adding in a black panel, a black subtraction panel. Just most of the V flats in studios are reversible, white on one side, black on the other, so we just turn them around and use the black side, and you can see here that now we've got a much more heightened degree of shadow on the left side of Allie's face. All right, let's move on. Next up, we're using a tool called a grid, a 10-degree grid spot. It's a honeycomb grid, and it fits on the front face of the beauty dish, and you can see it here, this black area. These are kind of cross-hatched, so you don't really see that in the diagram, but it lets a small amount of light through, and it constricts the light to a much tighter diameter, a much tighter pool of light. And you can see the result is that I've really been able to eliminate most of the spill happening on the background. So most of the light from the key light that would fall onto the background and cause it to be brighter is now gone, because that disc, that grid spot has now confined the light into a very small pool that's only falling on Allie's face. There's a much more higher degree of fall off that's happening from our light than without. So it's a really great way to control the light and just put the light exactly where you want it, okay? So when you think about lighting, one of the main things to focus on is that, you know, the light that you work with are just pools of light, and being able to control exactly where you put them, that's the thing. Being able to control and shape your light so that it falls exactly where you want it, that's what you want to learn how to do. And tools like grids are the best for that, okay? Grids and flags and nets. If you're not familiar with flags and nets, definitely jump on YouTube. Perhaps I'll write something in the future about those, but those are also really great tools. They're just subtraction and tools that allow you to cut light and confine light, the same as this grid is doing here. Okay. All right. So that is our 10-degree grid spot. So next, we're going to change the direction of our light, and we are going to move our light from our loop light position, which is about 45 degrees camera right, and we're going to bring our light centered right in front of our camera. The diagram is not accurate in that it shows this pointing directly at Allie. In actuality, it's above her and angled down at about a 45-degree angle. That is the classic Paramount lighting pattern. Okay, we also have our diffusion sock on here, and that is giving us this quality of light. It's a lovely quality of light. It does give us a dark shadow under here, and there is some shadowing under here. Now what we can do is we can add in a fill panel underneath, a fill card, either white or silver, and that is going to then open up all of those shadows. So we're going to do that next for our next look. So let's move on to our next look, and so here we are. Now you can see that I've added in a white reflector panel underneath, and again it's that same arrangement with the light overhead with the diffusion panel, a diffusion sock, and then the white reflector panel underneath, and they're both kind of at the same angle, that 45-degree angle, opposing each other, and that's kicking in fill from the overhead light back up into Allie, back up into the underneath the neck, opening up the eyes, right? Now, sometimes with white, you won't get quite the output that you want. You won't get enough of the fill. One of the nice things about white is you get a subtle secondary catch light in the eyes, and you can see that here in Allie's eyes. You can just see it right there. You've got a little bit of white catch light, and that's from the white reflector. And that's why when it works, and it's really going to depend on the complexion and how much light you're using and what modifier you're using and a lot of variables, but it's a more subtle secondary catch light, which is preferable in some ways. However, it wasn't working for me here. I wasn't really getting the output. Let's take that off, and you can see here we've still got sort of darker shadows underneath. So in the next look, I'm going to introduce a silver reflector, and that is really going to open things up dramatically. So let's take a look at that. Here we are. All right, so you can see big difference, right? All of this is now much more open. This is much more open, but you can see here we've got a much brighter catch light in the eyes because of that silver reflector that we're using now. So just something to be cognizant of, all right? Not that there's anything wrong with it. really, again, it's just a season to taste thing, but it's something to keep in mind. It's going to affect your look in some ways that are positive, in some ways that may or may not be negative for you. It doesn't really bother me too much here. You can always reduce it in post a little bit if you want as well. All right, let's move on to our next look. All right, so we're picking up from our last look. Just to recap, basically what we've got is a silver reflector underneath and the beauty dish with the diffusion sock overhead. Nothing has changed, but now I want to talk about distance and how the distance of your light from the background is going to impact the amount of illumination on the background. Okay, so when you're working with one light, that's going to be the way that you're going to control the amount of illumination that you have on the background. If you have more than the one light, obviously you'll light your background up using independent lighting zones, which I've talked about in the past, and those will allow you to have independent control between your subject and your background. However, with one light, you're going to be reliant on distance in order to control that. So the further away that you are from the background, the darker your background will be, and as you progressively move closer and closer to the background, the spill from that key light, the spill from your main light will progressively add more and more illumination to your background, okay? So we're starting off, I'm going to show you this, we're going to demonstrate it, moving progressively closer and closer in 3 steps. So this is step 1. Now we are as far away from the background as we're going to be for this shoot. We are about 15 to 20 feet. There we go. So here we are. Okay, so that's all the distance that I have between. That's about, again, about 15 to 20 feet. And that, because of that, we've got this nice dark background happening here. All right. Now there's still some spill that's falling on the background. That's why it's not completely black. And if we wanted it completely black, again, we could use the grid or we could angle our light, but that's not going to give us the beauty effect. Or we could try and pull our subject, everything, our model, our light, everything would come further away from the background. If you have this space, then you would do that, okay? And that's going to give us an even darker background. Again, the further away that we move that entire arrangement from the background, the darker it's going to get. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this entire arrangement and we're just going to move it closer by half, all right? So let's take a look at that. All right. So now we are half as close. I've moved it, I've taken everything, the model, the light, the reflector, and I've moved it closer to the background by half. And by doing that, I've got this, see here, now we are at about, 8 to 10 feet, right? Let's get rid of that. 10 feet, okay? So that is giving us a different look, right? That is giving us a much lighter background than we had before. That's the only thing that we're doing. Everything else is remaining constant. The relationship between our light and our model, the illumination on our model remains the same, but the illumination on our background changes because we're moving everything closer to it. All right? So next up, we are right up against the background. And as you can see, our background now is much brighter. In actuality, we are probably, because this is a cove, a cyc wall, it's got a built-in radius, so we can't be right on top of it. So we are probably between 2 and 3 feet away. See, now I can write better. Now you can actually read that. Between 2 and 3 feet from the background. So that's why we're getting this nice gray, light gray, kind of dove gray background. Okay. Now I want to let you know that because I'm using a beauty dish and it's a smaller source, it's only 27 inches, that we're going to have a higher degree of fall off. So if you wanted something really, really bright, you could use an umbrella, a bounce back umbrella, or you could use a larger octa or something that was a larger source, and that's going to give you a bigger wash of light, okay? And you could probably get a brighter background, but we're working with a beauty dish here. But we have been able to take the background from dark to light progressively by moving it closer and closer, all right? So let's take a look at all of those one after the other. So here you can see that we're starting on the left with our model and light far from the background, again about 15 to 20 feet. We then cut that distance in half in the middle shot, and we are at about 10 feet. We've got a nice darker background happening. Things are starting to darken up. And lastly, we are right close to the background, again between 2 and 3 feet, and we've got a much, much lighter background. right? So that's how you can do it. So I wanted to give you guys a bonus round. So I've got one more image to show you. And for that, I still wasn't, getting quite the brightness that I wanted. And again, like I say, that's a factor of the size of the modifier that I was using. But I figured, let me try and add a little bit more light, a little more open feeling to this image by using some V-flats, by using white reflectors. We've used one previously on one side, on the camera left. I figured let me add one on either side and really, just wash this whole image with light. Okay, so let me show you what that looks like for our bonus round. And there we go. So you can see here a much brighter overall look, a much more open kind of look. We've got light everywhere. And I think it works. It works really nicely. I'm happy with this look. You can see here that we've got our nice white background. It's got a little bit brighter. And we've got all of this brightness happening here. There's very little shadowing here and here. Just a very open, airy kind of nice fashion look. So lots of stuff you can do with one light. And any modifier. It doesn't have to be Beauty Dish. I love Beauty Dishes, but you can do a lot with any one modifier by changing your direction and introducing additional modification to that modifier, such as diffusion and grids, and of course direction and distance. So that's going to wrap it up for this month. I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and as always, I encourage you to get out there and swing for the fences. Don't be afraid to fail. Just try all this stuff. Reading the article is only the first part of it. Get out there and try these things, and I am sure that your photography will benefit from it. Until next time, this has been Michael Corsentino for Shutter Magazine, and I will see you next month.